of the other issues that comes up when we start talking about trade is the issue of domestic protectionism and some measures that a government might put in place that would qualify as protectionist measures. So it's a big term, but it's really not that complicated. If we're talking about domestic, then we mean the economy at home. And if we're talking about protectionism, it means that we want to protect our economy at home. In other words, we want to protect domestic industries to make sure that they're still price competitive, to try to ensure that we don't lose jobs. Typically, the industries that are taken care of with domestic protectionist policies are, very heavy with labor unions. The ones that have a little more bargaining power, that have a lot of employees. So this is where we usually find this to be relevant. Now, the two protectionist measures that you hear about most often historically and in the news would be quotas and tariffs. They are two completely different things, but they have the same goal. If we're talking about a quota would be a limit, a numerical limit on how many units or how much of a particular product could be brought into the United States. A quota, for example, might limit how many tons of steel, for example, another country was able to import. A tariff, on the other hand, is going to be an import tax. And you see a lot of stuff about tariffs if you study American history. Both of these measures have the same basic result. Let's say, for example, that we're talking about the automotive industry. In other words, American cars. If we're talking about one industry and we want to graph it, then we're going to look at price and quantity. And we can look at it in terms of just your everyday demand and supply curve. Okay? Demand and supply. Demand slopes down, supply slopes up. And here's our equilibrium. Now, if the government, for example, puts tariffs on imported automobiles, which we do, then it limits the ability of other countries to import fully assembled automobiles without jacking the price up quite a bit. Or if the U.S. puts tariffs on automotive parts, it also serves the purpose of limiting the number of foreign cars that are available in the United States. It means they have to assemble them here with American workers, which also drives up the price. So, what happens with our supply and demand graphs for the automotive industry with the presence of tariffs and quotas? Particularly tariffs, because that's what we're dealing with cars. Now, when we did supply and demand way back in Unit 1, we said that anything that makes it more difficult and or more expensive to produce a product is going to reduce supply. That's what's going to happen here. Because what you're trying to do is keep American goods, which cost a lot more to produce, competitive. So we're going to reduce the supply that's available in the American automotive market. So we take supply and we shift it to the left. Now, what happens? Price goes up, quantity drops. That's what happens in the United States. By putting tariffs on fully assembled cars and tariffs on automotive parts, it makes the imported cars more expensive, which reduces the total supply that's available, thereby protecting American jobs because they don't have to compete with foreign imports that are a lot cheaper because they're assembled with cheaper labor. And that's one of the things that has helped shore up or stabilize the automotive industry. Of course, it's not doing a great job today, but there's some other things involved. But anyhow, if we're talking about protectionism, quotas and tariffs are two measures that you're likely to see crop up.